Hey everyone, welcome back to the Script Concierge series. I'm Rachel Osbourne, the founder of Island Indies, and I'm here with my friend Kafi Kareem, the founder, the boss at Storyplay Media and Storyplay TV. Today we are talking about pitching your story, which is something that Kafi is great at. So we're just going to get a bit about her experience, get some tips from her so that you can pitch your story to whoever, and we'll talk about to who. All right, let's go. So, Kafi,
yes.
Tell me about the first thing that you pitched just to get us started there.
Okay, so the very first project that I ever pitched professionally, film project, was a cartoon called Big Man Dan. And I pitched it at the CaribbeanTales Incubator Big Pitch Competition in Toronto. That was in September of 2016. Okay. And so the story was about a man and his husband. And at the time, the version of the story that I pitched was that there was this newly married couple, and the husband had a penchant for telling tall tales because he would always get in trouble with his wife. And his way of explaining it away was to tell tall tales. And again, the name of the cartoon is Big Man Dan.
Okay, so I didn't realize that that was your first pitch.
Very first professional pitch.
Oh.
I had pitched before in like office settings because I had worked as like an intern and a reader at literary management companies. Mm-hmm. And one of the companies that I worked for, one of the things they liked us to do was to look at like story ideas, through the newspapers and just everything that we were reading. And if we had any cool pitches, the assistants, the managers would have us, spend some time with them just pitching ideas. Like this might be a good movie. This might be a good movie. Okay. But in terms of like my own project and pitching to a room of people who had some stakes to potentially help me get the project done, Caribbean Tales was my very first professional pitch.
Okay, because I thought you were like pro pitcher when I saw you
at
Caribbean Tales. I was like, she's good. She doesn't even need this incubator. She got this.
No. That was my very first professional pitch. But I think what helped in terms of a foundation was that I was very familiar with loglines. I was very familiar with the fundamentals of a pitch, even if I never had to stand up in a room and do it myself.
Yeah.
So I think that helped.
Yeah, you got practice. It paid off because you were second in that pitch competition, right?
Yes, I won the second place prize, which was awesome.
All right, winning. Okay, cool. All right, so we know you have experience. We know you pitched again after, but I want to wait to talk about the latest one that you did. So when you are getting ready to do your pitch, what is the first thing that you kind of do? Is it the log line that you do
Absolutely.
first? Okay.
The log line is very, very high up on the list. Of course, I'm going to figure out things like, well, what's the title of the project? What genre is it in? But the log line is very high up in the list. And the log line is made up of 3 parts. It's a character who wants something, encounters some sort of conflict in their pursuit of that thing, and then you sometimes hint at a little resolution. Mm-hmm. So for Big Man Dan, the log line for the series would have gone something like, I don't even remember what it was at the time because it has changed a lot, but it would have gone something like, Dan is a man who has a big problem. He can't seem to keep his wife happy. So he tells tall tales to make sure that she's, in good stead with him and to keep his marriage whole. Like, that's not what I said, but it would have gotten something like that because those are the main components. And so when you have those components in your head, it doesn't really matter what words you say, as long as you hit each of those beats. So I know that the character is Dan. I know that the conflict is that he wants to keep his wife happy. And so he tells tall tales. And the hint of the resolution kind of is that, well, will it work? Like, will his marriage, be sustained? Are these tall tales really going to work? Is his wife going to believe him? And so those are the building blocks of the logline. Luckily, in the program that we were working in, we had an opportunity to practice the logline and pitch a number of times, which is always really helpful. And I've continued that practice in every pitch that I've done. Like I've pitched to team members. They've given me feedback, because saying it aloud and, you know, just speaking it aloud, because you see how funky that pitch, what I just did for you was, right? It was a little bit.
But I was going to say, it had the same vibe. It had the same energy as the one that you did when we were at Caribbean Tales, because I remember thinking it even feels like almost a rhyme. Like it feels like you put the pitch into song almost. So it's like even your delivery of it, I was just like, this girl is a professional.
See, you are my, you just listen, big mouth girl. Gas me up. Okay. Make my head big. You don't think it big already? You know what I mean? Like, let's just make it bigger.
But there's something I think to do with the delivery as well, because you and I were at the same competition.
No, absolutely. And no, the logline is the most important part.
But for me, the confidence part of it, I didn't have that. I like talking in front of people. That's not my jam. I'll talk one-on-one in the background.
Fake till you make it, girl. Fake till you make it.
Well, right now I'm faking it till I make it, because usually I don't like talking to people either. But I think if I maybe did that this year, it would be a bit different. Because because although I don't love to talk in front of people, I've had to do it. So it's that practice thing. So I think practice is definitely
important.
Big part of this pitch process. Like you
exactly. You have to know the components of your logline, know them so well. Like you should know them as like the back of your hand or your address, right? You know them so well that even if you like lose the specific words you came up with, you still can deliver your logline because you know what parts are, you know, in there. And then when it comes to the practice and the confidence part of it, as you talked about, I don't know that anybody is really, well, I mean, maybe there's some people out there who are like completely like just confident and don't ever get any sort of like anxiety or stage fright around being in front of people. But I think most people do get some nerves, especially when you care about a project. You're going to be nervous. So it's definitely not about like not having those feelings. It's more about remembering that a pitch is a performance.
Yes.
And your film is usually, well, in the genres that we tend to work in and that we're talking about in the Script Concierge program, we're working on scripted formats, which are usually for entertainment, right? And no matter what we're trying to make people feel, we're trying to make people feel something. So if it's a dramatic film, you want them to feel that drama, right? And so you want to perform your pitch in a way that leaves people feeling like, "Ooh, this is so dramatic." You know what I mean? If it's dramatic, right? And if it's a comedy, then you want people to feel buoyant and you want them to laugh. So you want to find, okay, what are the comedic parts that I can pick out of this thing, and so that people start to feel like, okay, this is gonna be kind of jokes. Like this couple sound like they're gonna be like under some pressure here, right? Because you want people smiling if it's gonna be a comedy. If it's a horror, then you want people to start to think about, oh my God, I would not want to be in that situation, whatever situation the character is in. So the same way that we want our scripts to make people feel something, we want our pitches to make people feel something, which is why it's not so much about like not being nervous or like not having any doubt, you know, but it's about finding in you the confidence to perform it. And just reminding yourself that, hey, this is a performance. It's not about me. It's just about getting in front there and delivering the performance so that people can feel the energy of the pitch. Yes.
Because I definitely went into business mode and almost like school mode where it's like, okay, this is a pitch. It's a very professional thing. I got all quirky in my head. I got all stage frighty and I'm sweating just thinking about it.
Well, there are business components that we're going to put in there too, right? After you deliver the story, we make sure to squeeze that stuff in. But we definitely don't want to be so stuck on it.
Yeah, but even in just a logline, I was just like, chaos. So you know what I mean? Like I got very mechanical because I'm just like, I didn't know how to show my personality. It was a great experience though, because
that's awesome.
Standing up in front of all of those people and saying, yeah, this is my thing that I want to make. it was a lot.
I
It was
say
definitely a lot.
I say that's awesome because I'm hearing you talk about it. And from the way that you talk about the experience, I can tell how much you already learned about pitching,
Yes.
right? Because I'm hearing you say things like you were in your head and it was all mechanical. So you've already pinpointed things that you're going to like improve the next time that you have to pitch,
Right.
which is all that it's about. Just like we have to keep writing multiple drafts.
Yes,
You just do the thing. And you do it however you do it the first time, right?
Yeah.
And then when it comes out the first time and you realize that, oh, it wasn't so good here, it wasn't so good here, then you just tweak. And the more you practice, the more you have an opportunity to tweak, you know? I think what may have helped too is that I have a performance background and I've been performing since I was like, right? Like 3 or whatever, right? Right. So since I was 3 or whatever, I've been performing. So I'm very familiar with that whole, like, you know, backstage anxiety. Now you just go on, smile and deliver. Exactly. So I was able to like channel that performance experience into pitching. So I would have had like a leg up on somebody who didn't have performance experience. So it's not like there's anything special. It's just that I was practiced, right? I was practiced in the art of performing. And so I was able to channel that into,
So
into
then that is the tip that we're going to take away from our different experiences at Caribbean Tales, is that being practiced doesn't just mean practicing in front of the mirror, because I definitely did a lot of that, but practicing it in front of people, seeing their reactions, stuff like that. Even if it's people that you know, a stranger on the street, I don't know who you're gonna practice with, but like just getting it out so that you build up that confidence, because you can't really build up the confidence unless you're keeping on doing it. Because I'm sure the next time I have to pitch something, I might still be, you know, have that nerves going, but I'll probably be at a better stage to not let the nerves take me over. In a sense. Because I would have to be performing in public a little bit more often, and just like, I know myself better. This was like, what, 4 years ago? Like, I know myself a little bit more.
So much better. 4 years more of knowledge.
Exactly. Like, I'm an adult now.
Boom. Grown up. So I think what you mentioned about trying to find somebody that you can pitch to in practice is important too. When we were in Toronto, I was with Ayana Harper, who is Storyplay's editor. And so I was able to pitch to Ayana and go through this story with her, even though I was pitching in my head as well. She was around, so I could also pitch to her. And so I think that little things like that are helpful, you know, because it's always about the connection and not about the material. It's always like about connecting with whoever is in the room and not so much about the material, because you, as a writer, you're going to do the work to make sure that the material is solid, of course. But pitching is about now that you've already done that work of making sure the material is solid, can I make a connection with somebody in a way that helps them feel what I'm trying to communicate through this story and gets them excited about it enough to want to take a follow-up step, whether that follow-up step is, let's give this girl a prize, or let's give her some money, or let's produce this, let's greenlight this thing, or I want to be an actor on this project. Whatever the follow-up action is that you want people to take, in order to get them to take that action, you first have to elicit an emotional response. And so the pitch performance is about that connection, right?
Right. And I guess it would be different too if you're pitching in a smaller room, in terms of like the confidence and the nerves, like pitching to a smaller crowd, because like I'm more comfortable with like 2 or 3 people. That's good. I can, you know, I feel okay kind of like being myself. I just get in my head kind of when it's like, okay, there's 50 people, 70 people, 100 people in this room. They're all looking at me. Do I have boogers? You know?
A tip that works for me, and I don't know if it would work for you, because I think everybody should just find their own personality, but just in case it does, I'll share it anyway. Well, it's 2 tips. One is, I guess, related to the fact that, you know, we talked about it being a personal thing, right? So personality and authenticity. However you would be with those 2 people, when it's a bigger room, imagine that it's 2 people and you just have to speak louder, right? Because it's still about connection, right? So you don't want to lose the fact that it's still an intimate conversation, with just happens to be an intimate conversation with 500 people. But it's still an intimate conversation. So one of the things in that same vein that I did for that pitch, which worked for me, is that as soon as I got up there, I was like, how do y'all feeling today? And people were like, we're good. I was like,
Right.
nice. All right. So y'all want to hear about this story or what? And they're like,
Okay.
yeah. And then we started, right?
Yeah,
So
engagement.
it just added 2 seconds to the pitch. But at least I felt like I had connected with the people in the room. I knew that they were good. I knew that they were listening. And we were ready to move from there. You know what I mean? And for
Right.
me, that's important. If it's 2 people, I want to know how you're doing. Who are you?
Yeah.
You know, like, you all right? Before we go anywhere, you good? All right, let's do this now, right? So that's my personality, and I brought that to the pitch. So
Right.
you will have your things that you do in conversations, you know what I mean? Like, you're always really good at checking on people. You always like have something, you can compliment people in the room. It can be, you can pick one person out and be like, you look really good today. You should come up here and pitch for me, right? Whatever you do, it's just about connection, right?
Right.
And you can take a second, like we had a time pitch which was 5 minutes.
Mhm.
But you can take a second out of that, or 5 seconds out of that 5 minutes, to just make a connection with people.
Right.
And if you make a connection with 1 out of the 500, the room of 500 will feel that same connection. Like, oh, that was,
Right.
that was cute. That's a real moment between two human beings. And I feel like, okay, I kind of see who this person is now.
Yeah.
And that may not work if you're doing something more dramatic. Maybe if you're doing something more dramatic, you want to, as opposed to engaging people in a warm way, you might want them to get a little bit uncomfortable. Like, you might present them with some information that right off the bat makes them feel like, oh, like, at the edge of their seat,
Right.
you know. But again, it's matching your pitch to the mood of your story, and doing some work to think about, okay, how can I make this connection work in a way that fits the mood of what I'm doing? And if you're doing something that comes from a genuine place, it'll flow naturally. You just have to like sort of get out of your own way. I think a lot of times we get in our own way and we get so like bogged up and like, okay, I have to remember. If you don't get things perfect, but you connect it to people, they'll still remember you.
Exactly.
After the pitch, somebody told me that, it was a really good conversation that we had. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess too, when we're thinking about the pitch, it's like the pitch is not necessarily always like the final time you're going to have any kind of connection with that person. So you don't necessarily have to vomit all your information at once. Your pitch could be like, depending on different place. And I think we should talk about that next. What are the different scenarios in which you would need to pitch your story as a screenwriter?
Yeah. So you will need to pitch your story anywhere that somebody who can help you move it forward is. So one of the titles for a short pitch is an elevator pitch. And the way that an elevator pitch got that title is that the idea is that if you happen to be like, at a restaurant or a hotel and you get on this elevator to go to the next floor, right? And you turn and you see that the person next to you is Oprah. And she's like, hey, you look interesting. What do you do? And you're like, well, I write movies. And she's like, oh, well, I produce movies. Tell me about it. Right? That's my Oprah voice. I don't know if she sounds anything like that, but that's okay. So you need to be able to tell Oprah what you're working on in a very quick way. So that's an informal situation where you may not expect to pitch, but that's the nature of pitching. You need to know your pitch so well that if you happen to run into anybody at the right moment, you can tell them what you're working on in a way that helps them understand the complete story. So there's informal pitches like that where you're going to just run into somebody who's the right, fit for your project, or who's interested in what you're doing and they want to know more. That's one type of pitching. Another type of pitching, or another opportunity you may have to pitch, is in competitions and markets, like the one that Rachel and I participated in, the CaribbeanTales Incubator. I also participated in another similar market called the Caribbean Film Mart, which was hosted by the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. So there are festivals and incubator programs all around the world that create opportunities for producers to take their films to market through market incubators and also through competitions. So those are scenarios where you may have to pitch. Another place that you may have to pitch is if if there is somebody who has landed on your material through your website or through YouTube and they invite you into a meeting, and again, they ask you, well, okay, so tell me more about what you're working on. You're going to have to pitch there as well. Another scenario where you may have to pitch is every time that you meet somebody who's a prospective financier, you're going to have to pitch your project. So there's the oral pitch, the verbal pitch, which is where you speak about what your project is about. You deliver your logline orally. There's and then there are different types of written pitches. So there's a one-sheet written pitch. That's a common type of pitch that you use. You often just use the logline, the written logline, to pitch as well. Like when you send queries out to agents, literary agents, if you're looking, or literary managers, if you're looking for representation. Oftentimes you'll send a query that just has your logline in it. And that is a pitch as well. It's a written pitch. And then there's a pitch deck, which is where you outline the story and business of a film or TV project to get prospective people interested. So the simplest of those is a logline, whether it's oral or written. And the most complicated is a deck. But they all have the same intention, and that is to communicate your story to people and get them interested in helping you move it forward.
Right. So your elevator pitch is for those like informal kind of like, oh, we just happen to be talking about this, where you're just like, all right, quick 1-2 in and out. And that could possibly lead you to getting an actual meeting with someone to do a formal pitch, which it may or may not require a deck. Right?
Mm-hmm. The thing is that even with the informal elevator pitch, it's really not much of a difference between the different types of pitching. They all include a logline, mm-hmm. right? They all include information about your story. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to make it seem like, the elevator pitch is going to be that drastically different from what you would you would say in a meeting. You may have more time in a meeting to go into different parts of the aspect, exactly, different aspects of the project. But the core fundamental part of your story, which is the logline and, the genre and the title and that kind of stuff. Again, the idea is that you're going to know it so intimately that anytime you have an opportunity, you can just bring it out. And from a competition to the elevator, it's the same information that you're going to be delivering.
Right. It's just the method or the style of delivery that is different. Yeah. All right, cool. So you mentioned the film market that you did. Let's talk a bit about that too, and then go into the anatomy of the pitch deck. So tell me about your experience with pitching at the film market.
So the Caribbean Film Mart, again, is part of the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. So what they did is they brought over a dozen, in the year that I participated, they brought over a dozen producers to the Film Mart. We had to give them, in order to apply for the Film Mart, you sent in a finished feature film, and there was an application process. And so the dozen plus filmmakers that were selected got an opportunity to hear different speakers from different parts of the industry talk about just different aspects of filmmaking, from distribution to development and what works in Latin America versus other countries. The format of the actual pitch part of the competition was such that we got an opportunity to do this sort of speed round prep with all of the industry professionals who had attended the Film Mart. And so we went from table to table with each professional, and we were able to pitch our projects to them, get individual feedback, hear from them in terms of what makes a good pitch and what's selling internationally, and then have an opportunity to incorporate all of that feedback into then, I believe it was 5 minutes, again, a 5-minute pitch for a panel of judges. And so that was the format.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so this was a pitch for the Caddy Club, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I applied to the Film Mart, I applied with a script that I had written in 2011, and it was called The Fairway. And it was a coming-of-age drama, crime drama. Well, it had fantasy elements, but it was a coming-of-age fantasy family drama-ish thing. That was fairly, like, it wasn't super dark in tone, but it was fairly based in realism. You know what I mean? Fairly realistic. When I attended the Film Mart, I met Joanne Butcher, who was one of the judges and one of the speakers. And one of the most valuable pieces of information that she gave us in the talks that I talked about that we were able to attend prior to pitching is that she talked about what international sales agents are looking for and what types of genres will be able to sell domestically and internationally. And the genres that she mentioned were family features, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, faith-based films. Those are some of the genres that she mentioned. And so with that in mind, I was like, you know what? I'm going to up the family and fantasy elements of my pitch, because if that's what people want, I'm gonna get them what they want. And so what I did is I reworked the pitch, and what I ended up pitching was the Caddy Club, which is a story about 4 gang-affiliated friends who turn into superheroes when they're sent to a community service program that actually happens to be the location where there's a secret portal to a magical realm. And so when they cross over to this magical realm, they are gifted with crime-fighting gifts, and they're able to come back into the real world and fight the gang leaders who got them in trouble and sent to the community service program in the first place.
Okay.
So I pitched that at CFM.
Right. And how did that go?
It went really well. It was a fun pitch. I was able to practice again quite a few times. Ayana was there. One of the people who used to work with the team, Samuel, he was there. We got to pitch with them for quite a few times. They were able to give me feedback. So I felt like fairly rehearsed. I practiced it on my own. After the pitch, people told me that the judges laughed. I'm saying people told me because I don't know if I'm consciously aware that they were laughing, but people told me that the judges did laugh. So that means that they were engaged enough to like find humor in the pitch. I remember how I constructed the pitch because I remember putting it together the night before, and I knew that I wanted to throw my daughter in there because it's going to be this family feature that the whole point of it is that you can watch it with your kids.
Yes.
And so I know I wrote this line that I knew I wanted to squeeze into the pitch, which was that I pitched it to my daughter, and she said it's good. So if she says it's good, then like there's no question about it because she's totally unbiased and she's professional. She's the most professional 3-year-old audience member in the world.
So now give me all the money, thank you.
Now give me all your money, because this 3-year-old who's completely unbiased and watches lots of cartoons said that this is a hit, right? I knew that I wanted to put her in there, and I knew that I wanted to mention that that crime is no match for the Caddy Club, so that we get this kind of genre superhero vibe going. So I had some key things that I wanted to squeeze in there, and then everything else came from the feedback that I got from the judges, who told me things like make sure to have a plan about how you're going to spend the money, how much money you need to spend, how much money you need to raise, when you're going to raise it by, and make sure to deliver that in the pitch. Joanne Butcher again was key when it came to that. Another one of the professionals who was there to give us advice, Michael Muska, he told me that you want to make sure that it has some fun visuals so that we can really start to see the genre. So a comparison that I think we came up with was we compared the film to Home Alone and the kind of gags that you saw in Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin. And we said that we'll try to include those kinds of gags in the Caddy Club. So things like that, I was able to integrate into the pitch as well, based on the feedback that everybody was giving me. And then I had my core, I had my log line, I had my core things that I wanted to squeeze in, and then I just put it all together. And it worked out very well because I walked away with the top prize, which was cash that I was able to turn into runway to help me buy some time to develop the script, which was really, really valuable.
Right. And I mean, I think we touched on this in our last video in terms of like spending time in development. So were there any kind of stipulations on how you could use the funds, or was it just like, here's the money?
Yeah. Not in the year that I was a part. I don't know how CFM works and if it's going to continue working this way and how it has worked before. But in the year that I participated, there was no restriction. So it was like, this is the prize money. You can go buy a car. Well, it wasn't enough to buy a car, but let's just say it was, right? Yeah. You can go buy, what could you buy with it? I don't know, but you can go buy whatever. You can go shopping, or you can put it into your project. There was no stipulation or anything, but I decided that I wanted to put it in. It just made sense to, like, how are you going to win this prize money for the project?
And then go spend it on chips.
I know, right? And just like go grocery shopping and like buy out the whole, I don't know, go take a trip or something, go to Jamaica. I
think my point was a long-winded way to say, like, there was no stipulation on the funds, but you used the funds for development.
Yes.
And what did that kind of look like? Without giving away your whole life, what did that kind of look like for you in terms of like, how did you even decide like how you're going to allocate that money towards your development?
Yeah. So the thing is that I was working on other projects simultaneously. So putting it towards development for me really meant buying time that I would have had to spend maybe on other projects and other ways to like get money to be able to finish the script, finish the pitch deck, and work with producers to get it to a stage where hopefully it could get financed, the project, right? So every day for a period of, let's see, so I got the funds in October of 2018. And by February of 2019, my timeline might be a little bit off, but it's somewhere around there, like February. I'll have to go check the email train to be sure. But by February of 2019, I definitely had my first draft. So it bought me, all of October, November, January, February, to work on the script. I think maybe by January or February, I definitely had a first draft. And then I worked on multiple drafts throughout the year, as well as the pitch deck. So by a year later, I had a package where I had a pitch deck, I had the script that had been, vetted and had like multiple passes of notes on it. And I also had started casting. And all of that was able to come from, the prize money, buying me time to be able to work on the project.
Right, because it's hard to fully work on a feature when you have to be like doing other projects, freelancing essentially your production services for money just to survive.
Absolutely. So I still had other projects going on. I don't want to make it seem like I didn't, because that wouldn't be fair or accurate. To make it seem like, because I know everybody has to juggle. And I was working on like an architectural visualization project, but and a couple other minor things, but it wouldn't have been as much as I would have had to do, if that makes sense, if I didn't have that prize money. Because if I didn't have the prize money, then I would definitely have to have filled the gap with some other way. Make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
The financial gap.
Yeah, exactly. So it afforded you some time, not
Yes,
necessarily
absolutely.
all the time in the world.
Way more time than I would have had otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you were able to, and again, going to a pitch competition and pitching that first time doesn't even mean that's where pitching ends. So it allowed you to build your package to further pitch to the people that can bring in the money for actual production. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's talk about probably what most people really care about is what do you put in a pitch deck? Because I went through your pitch deck that's on Vimeo. So that one is like investor focused, right? I went through that and I saw that you have 15 sections, essentially. Yes. This includes the cover and contact information, but about 15, yeah?
Right, exactly. So this pitch deck is actually on the long side. When I first started learning about decks, the recommendation is like, it's around 10. This pitch deck was made with a lot of feedback, again, from people who were considering producing the film, from Joanne Butcher, who was one of the judges and who came on board as an advisor to help me develop the film. And we landed at 15 pages, but we felt like all of the information is really necessary. So in your pitch deck, you're going to have a title page, right? Where you, of course, have the title of your film. The look and feel of your title page is very important. We had a lot of back and forth on my team about our cover page. Let me give you some of the drama. So again, I was working with a really small budget because I was using the prize money and trying to stretch it. And so I had I hired a graphic designer to create a cover page that basically compiled like some images from the internet and like, you know, made a little logo, whatever. It wasn't the highest production value. We knew it. I knew it. Everybody knew it. But I was just working with what we had. And there was a lot of feedback, like, if we send this to people, this is the first thing that they see, they're going to think that we're making a janky ass movie, right? Because they don't want to know that you don't have budget right now and then it's going to, you're going to get later. More.
Yeah.
No, it's like first impression. So your cover page does matter. That said, one of the workarounds that I used to get a high quality image without a lot of spend is that there are sites like nappy.co and unsplash.com that have professional photos that you can download for free. And in lieu of using the composited image from the graphic designer that was a little bit contentious, I used a photo that was like golf centric, since the community service program that the kids go to in the Caddy Club is a golf course. That's why it's called the Caddy Club. I didn't mention that before, right? But they go to this community service program and it's at a golf course. And since it's this golf theme throughout the movie, I used a golf image, which was, I think, a better choice than the composited image from the graphic designer. So the first thing is the title page. It's super important, and it can really, make a lasting impression on people. The next thing is the log line. So we always talking about the log line. It's everywhere, it's everywhere. It's the most important thing, right? Because it's everywhere. It's going to be in your queries. It's going to be in your elevator pitch. It's going to be in every pitch that you do, including the pitch deck. So the next thing is the log line. And if you have space for one, you can do like a short synopsis, right? So then my pitch deck that I recently created, again, is financier focused, as you mentioned. So I had done some research about, okay, what does the market look like in more established film industries for the genre that I'm working in? So I'm producing a family feature, and what research has shown is that there is a dearth of family content in the Caribbean region, and that family content and adventure films actually make up about a quarter of the domestic productions in more established markets And so that combined information, the fact that they're like basically none in our industry, and that it's 25% of the types of films that are being made in more established markets, really pointed to the fact that this is a really good opportunity for our region, because we don't have any and they sell, right?
Exactly. So fill that gap.
Fill that gap. So that information was important for me to put in there. And the next slide talks about comparable movies and how they've performed. So an important thing here is to look at movies in your budget range.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that in there. I've never actually seen a version of a pitch deck that is like, okay, this movie was in my budget range. Can you talk about like why that's important?
Yeah. So it's really important to show not only films that are in your genre and that are similar in story, but also films that are in the same budget range. Because what you're doing is, if you are pitching to a numbers person or a financier, they want to see that examples of where this amount of money has been spent and it had this result. What you don't want to do is compare your film, if you're going to spend $100,000 on your film, to a $5 million movie. You can, in terms of saying that the stories are similar, but the point of this slide in the deck is to show this is how much money my project could potentially make. And it's unrealistic to set your project up to try to make back the same amount of money that a $5 million production made, right? It's not fair. So you're putting yourself in a really disadvantageous position if you do that. And so I did have versions of the deck where I made exactly that mistake, where I was comparing Caddy Club to like Harry Potter and Spy Kids, and I didn't have any examples that were in my budget range to show how much money those movies made. And so Joanne Butcher, who was, again, a really close advisor on the project, and who is a close advisor on the project, she was quick to be like, no. She's a numbers person, right? So she's like, if you're pitching this to people who are about numbers, that's like, well, how do I know how your film is gonna do, and how films that are like yours are gonna do? So it's about showing that this product, right? When people spend this amount of money to produce a similar product, it is able to make this much back. And so that's why it's important to have projects in your budget range. And then because we're working on a Caribbean film, it was also really important to have films that were Caribbean films that would appeal to the Caribbean diaspora, to show how diaspora audiences potentially will respond in terms of box office numbers. So we also included Bazodi, Green Days, films that were of our country, so that you could see how these national films were performing, in addition to looking at films that were in a similar budget range.
That makes sense. And then, so after that, you actually put your characters or your cast and your characters mix, right?
Exactly. So we have already started casting, and we have offered several roles. We identified 4 amazing, beautiful, cute, energetic stars that I'm really excited to work with, and we offered them the lead roles for the project. One has already confirmed and signed his agreement. The others are pending. We've had a lot of disruptions due to COVID, so we're giving people some time for us to figure out what comes next, and then for us to circle back with them. So we do have a page where we listed the cast, and this is an important element because everybody from potential, we were thinking of doing the project live action, and when we were thinking of doing it live action, we were talking to directors of photography, and she was really excited to see the cast. Potential actors who wanted to come on board were excited to see the cast. So if you have cast, or if you have prospects in mind, it's important to include that in the deck, because seeing those faces really makes the project feel real, and it's an appealing element and an important element of the film package.
Can I ask you something though?
Of course.
Do you think that you will end up doing another version now that it's no longer going to be live action but animation? Do you think that when you are in production, if you still do need, say you're pitching to a distributor, do you think you would redo a version of your deck with some of like the base animations or the draft animations?
Oh,
Stuff like that?
absolutely.
Okay.
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because the very next step for this project is to create some new concept visualization, new concept art. So the very next step for us is going to be to recruit a design team to get the look and feel going for the new approach of the project.
Right,
because
and you listed that in your, sorry to cut you, but you listed that in your status, one of the slides that you do have for your deck.
I think so. I don't know if it's in this version, but I hope so. I hope so. Okay, good. Good.
So that's good, and that's good for investors to know, because if, or even other people that you want to work with, because as a producer type, that I would be concerned about that too, to see a version of the deck.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're closer to to other folk.
No, that's a great question. That's a great question. The very next step for this project is to create that art. And so that we can, and the art will not only help us revamp the deck, but also every version of the project pitch that lives everywhere, on the websites, on the social media. Every time that we talk about the Caddy Club, the next step is to have art that actually represents the new vision for what the Caddy Club is going to look like, right? So that's what's going to happen next. I'm so glad you asked that.
Yeah, and I hope the artists are cool with making the characters look like your little kids that you already have on board. That would be so cool.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the approaches that we're thinking of going with, and I'm excited to see how it develops.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so we don't necessarily need to go into all the other parts of the deck. I'll just quickly run through, just in the interest of time, because we're going to link it so people can go and look at it. So after characters, you did a director's statement, SWOT analysis, distribution strategy, very important, marketing strategy, also important, and then you went deeper into your budget. We already mentioned production status, and then you went into the team, and then the benefits of becoming an investor, and then ended with your contact info. Are there any of those that you think are really important for us to kind of like pull out and talk about right now?
All of them. Okay. But no, let's focus on, let me see.
I think distribution.
The director statement and the distribution strategy.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about director statement then.
I think because it's a creative project, you definitely want to have that slide that helps people understand the why.
Yes.
And the director statement helps people understand the why. And it helps them understand the vision that's going into the whole project. So I think that's important, and you want to try to communicate the vision as best as you can. And then the distribution strategy is how you're going to make your money back.
Yes.
And so that one is also really important. You want to show that you have a clear plan for how you're going to take this project to market and how you're going to take steps to make your money back.
All right, cool. Because I don't know if I was surprised, but I liked that you had SWOT analysis in the typical SWOT analysis format, because I've seen decks where they do that, but they don't break it down as much as you did. And I guess that's important for not just investors, but people who you want on your team to see like where the gaps are, where your strengths are, so that they know a little bit more about wanting to get on board. Do you want to talk about your SWOT for Caddy Club a bit?
So the thing is that there, as I mentioned, there were a lot of hands on this deck. And so I can't take full credit for all of the elements. And the addition of the SWOT analysis definitely didn't come from my desk. It came from one of the producers who was considering being on board with the project. And he thought it was important to include like the full SWOT. And this was his analysis that went into the deck. Okay,
awesome. I think that's a good addition, even just as the creative who's like setting up the deck, for you to actually like take that step back, look at the bigger picture, see where you kind of like fit in the market.
Absolutely.
as a little gift, we used Kafi's version of the pitch deck as a bit of a template. So we created a template in Canva that you can, if you want, access and use as your own template to create your own pitch deck. And you can customize it any way that you see fit. So just look in the description for the link for the pitch deck. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us in this video pitching your story. If you do have any questions, you can leave comments in the comment section, questions for Kafi or I. And I'm sure we'll be back with another video, yes? I don't know what we're talking about next, but we will be back. So subscribe, like, share. If this was helpful, share it with somebody. And that's it.
All right. We have a good time every time. So trust me, you're going to want to have to tune in to the next one, because this is like the most exciting script conversation ever.
We have fun. I don't know. But we certainly have fun. And I think it's good to kind of have these conversations in our context, because I do see a lot of these resources, but having that like little bit of difference where you can get that like Caribbean market perspective on it, I think is helpful. So us sharing what we're learning, I don't know, if it helps one person, it's good for me. You know?
Absolutely. I feel the same way.
All right, cool. So until the next one, guys, keep dreaming, keep working. Bye-bye.